guys, this is Paige Owens. I am the content director of Alternative Press, and today I'm joined by Ben Bruce of Asking Alexandria.
The best member of Asking Alexandria, if you ask me.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, if you ask anyone, I would hope, except for maybe the other members.
Yeah, I'd say Danny will definitely say himself.
Yeah, the other guys might say me though.
So we'll just leave it at Danny will pick himself, and the other guys might pick you.
Yes.
That's fair. I can live with that. So we wanted to talk to you today because obviously Asking Alexandria have their brand new album coming out, and we're really excited about it. So I hope everyone else is too.
They best be. We put all the work and effort into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's feels like it's been a really long time coming.
It does, and it's weird because I feel like the self-titled record, the one right before this, was such a whirlwind, but we didn't do any press. It was the return of Danny. We didn't do anything. We just kind of put it out and did what we do. So it's kind of like, this feels like the first record we've done in like 10 years, which obviously isn't the case, but just it feels like a really long time.
Is it strange that, you guys went from having your self-titled album where it was the return of Danny to now you guys have this amazing new album coming out, and it feels like everything is out of whack and you just can't do the normal steps of getting an album out there, like going on a tour like you mentioned?
Yeah, it was really weird too. It was a little bit like every time Asking Alexandria releases a record, there are like internet trolls that just get so pissed that it doesn't sound like the previous one, which is part and parcel. I think it's just normal for Asking Alexandria at this point because we do progress with every record, and people always come around and like, oh, never mind, I judged it too fast. And I think we've never stressed about it because every time we've released an album, we've had tour. So we've put an album out and we've gone straight on tour, and we see the reaction and we see people going, whoa, this is great, and we hear them sing along. So for us, it's like, okay, phew, this time that's gone. So we had a bit of a meltdown, like, oh my goodness, like, what are we gonna do? We can't promote this record, we can't go on tour. And we got really nervous about it for quite a minute. Now we're at the point where we're super excited again. Now that we've kind of got to grips with what's happening and we've kind of accepted it, we're excited again. It is a shame that we can't go on tour with it, but the response has been insane. I think this is the first time in our career AntiSocialist went straight to top 10 at radio, which is absolutely insane. We've never had that before. We've never gone into a record cycle with a hit.
Right.
It's the first time we've ever had that, so that's super exciting. And then on top of that, Down to Hell, we've just released for fun, like Here's Some More Music. That is climbing the radio charts too, and we haven't even taken that to radio, which is insane to me. So I'm just like, wow, these are really like starting to connect now, and we're noticing it online. Our streams are going up and up and up. People are coming back to comments and going, I misjudged these songs. They've been stuck in my head since I heard them. So I'm excited again. I just wish we could take them on the road, because we wrote this entire album with a live show in mind for the first time ever. So it's a bit of a bummer, but we'll get there eventually, I guess.
It's really interesting, and you bring up a perfect point, is that you guys were obviously like a main stage band for Warped Tour. And now you're touring with like really iconic musicians like Papa Roach, for example. So what was the original mindset? Obviously, Danny came back and you released the self-titled, but what was the mindset going into this album and really breaking out of the scene?
We were looking back at everything we've done, and we're super proud of our journey and everything, but we kept seeing the same thing. There was such a negativity within what people call the scene, I guess. Mm-hmm. Even as far as like, not just trolls and like people's opinions on how something should sound, but live shows too. Like, and we're guilty of it as well, And if you go and look at any live band from that scene for years and years, you'll hear like, I want to see blood, I want to see violence, I want to see mayhem. And, like I said, we're guilty of that too. And we just were like, I don't want to do that. That sucks. That is not what rock and roll is about. That is not what we want to push on people. That's not what we want to promote. And we started touring with all these bands like Avenged and Shinedown and Papa Roach, and their shows are so much fun. Like, we'll be on this stage playing in front of 15,000 people in an arena, and every single person is laughing, and they're jumping up and down, and they're singing along. And these people don't leave with broken bones and broken noses.
Right.
They leave with memories, and they leave with a smile on their face, and they go, I cannot wait to do that again. And you see parents with their kids on their shoulders, and it's like, wow, this is what a rock and roll show is. This is tens of thousands of people connecting with one thing in common, and that's rock music. And that's what we want. And it's like, and this whole album is very, very like optimistic, very hopeful. It's got a big message of like self-love and appreciation in it. And that's just kind of what we want to do. It's like, I don't care if we get the biggest wall of death. I don't care if we get the biggest circle pit. I just want to see people have the best time of their lives. And I want people to leave and go, we had an amazing time. I can't wait to do that again. Instead of at our old shows, I feel like there used to be multiple ambulances called and lined up outside of the venue when we played. And I'm like, that sucks. I don't want to send someone's kid home with a broken limb. Like, that's, to me, that's not what rock and roll is. It's not cool. It's not fun. And I'm a dad now. I've got kids. I want my kids to go to rock and roll shows and have the best time of their life. I don't want them to go and get beat up, you know. And I think it goes back a long way to like hardcore and stuff. When we used to play those shows, that people would just fight, like fist fight. There was one show we played that such a fight broke out, the venue got burnt down after we played. Like, it got burnt to the ground. And I was like, yeah, this was in like Connecticut back in like 2008, I think. I was like, wow, this is pretty extreme, you know. It's something that we don't want to promote. That's just not what we're about, you know. I'd much rather see people singing along or crying or having a real connection with the music instead of someone fist fighting, because it's, I don't know why.
Obviously, the whole thing about rock and roll, and I think that we both can say is like such a misconception and such a thing that like our grandparents would say at this point. It's like sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Right.
That's not really what it is, and that's not what it's about. And people do forget that there's like this wholesomeness to rock and roll. It doesn't need to be violence. It doesn't need to be.
It shouldn't be violent.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's not angry music. That rock and roll helped me through my entire childhood. When my parents were getting divorced and I was confused as to who I was, like, rock and roll, whether it was, you know, Ozzy Osbourne and Led Zeppelin and Metallica, or if it was newer bands when I was a kid, like System of a Down or Slipknot or Avenged Sevenfold, it helped me. And my grandparents were so cool. And I used to show them. I remember showing my grandma like Forest by System of a Down. And she would just get it. She would be like, I get it. And it was such a cool thing to me. And then somewhere along the line, people started misconstruing rock music with violence and aggression. And it's easy to see why when you look at shows like in clubs where people are leaving with bloody noses, and bands like us are on stage going, I want to see violence. Like, I remember we played South by Southwest years ago, and we were like the talk of the entire, like, it's not even a festival, the you know what South by Southwest is. It's a huge music event, and we were the talk of the entire thing because the SWAT team and everything had to come round, because when we played an outdoor stage with fencing all around it. The fencing got torn down and people came in from the streets and there was a riot. And at the time we were like, oh, this is cool. And our label was like, wow, you guys are the headlines. I look back now and I'm like, man, how many people got injured that day? How many people's night was ruined because of that behavior? And it's just sad, because rock and roll is it's a family, you know. It's always, it's never really been about rebelling the way people think, like in aggression and anger. It's more about rebelling against being told what and who you have to be. It's more about finding yourself and being comfortable within yourself. And the idea of rebellion is, you know, fuck what they want me to be, I'm going to be me. And that's what it should be. And that's what you still see at these massive festivals and stuff. And so that's kind of where we're at in our lives and our career too. And that's just kind of what we want to be part of. We want to be part of someone's best memories ever. We don't want to be part of their hospital bill. Right,
exactly. Because, you know, how fun is it to be like, yeah, I went to an Asking Alexandria show, I went to the hospital, had a $10,000 bill from that, and now I'm not going to be going to any shows anytime soon because I've got that lingering over me. What's
Yeah,
fun
that
about
sucks. There's nothing cool about it. And that's the one thing, especially like Shinedown and Papa Roach, we spent a lot of last year touring, the last 2 years touring with them. And both bands got up on that stage and they were so positive and they were so like, and it just oozed off the stage into the crowd. Like you see people having that. I remember I would go out front after we played and watch Shinedown every night from the soundboard, and I would just look around at points in their set and you're surrounded by people smiling, laughing, kids, adults, grandparents. I was like, this is a family event. And I just remember thinking, this is it. This is rock and roll. This is the coolest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life.
You know, you've got to take something from that, because there's a reason that Shinedown and Papa Roach have been doing this so long. There's a reason that you can look out into a crowd and see generations of people and not just one age group. There is a reason for that, and everyone should be taking note of that.
They should. And that's what really got me, the generations, like you said. And that's something that we've started to see in Asking Alexandria, because we've spent a while like building on this. And it's funny because when we did our tour, we did a co-headliner with Black Veil Brides on the self-titled album run. It was us and Black Veil co-headlining, and it was so obvious to see the divide in the crowd. It was like, oh, the Asking fans are here, and they were like 25 through 35 through 45, and a lot of them had kids with them. I was like, this is cool. And then there was Black Veil's fan base, which was predominantly younger, which is fine. You know, every band has a different fan base, but there was a big gap, and it was like, okay. And I remember thinking, well, I'm so happy that we've built the fan base we have, because it's so cool to see people with their kids at these shows, because that's how rock and roll is going to stay alive. It needs to be passed down from one generation to the next. And so to see that for me is really cool. I get so many people now like hit me up saying, hey, my 7-year-old daughter's a huge fan of your band because I introduced you to her. And I'm like, whoa, hang on a minute. Parents are introducing their kids to my band now. It used to be the kids were listening to it and the parents are going, I'm not too sure about this.
Not sure about this. Yep.
So I like it. I like that Asking Alexandria is becoming an event for everyone.
Right. And you guys have, you know, like you were saying earlier, and how, you know, there are those group of loud fans who are like, just recreate, stand up and scream. But you guys have transcended so beyond that album at the time. I mean, there are things that even I think back of and I'm like, oh my God, not the American average. That's healthy.
It's fucking terrible. And again, we were teenagers when we wrote that, and we were in a specific mindset. And I tell people now, I'm like, we don't even play that song live anymore, because we don't condone that message. And I tell those people, I'm like, how can I come home and look my daughter in the eye and say, guess what daddy did today? Like, I can't fucking do that. It's disgusting. It's bad. And that's not what I want to instill in my kids. It's not what I want them to think rock and roll is. And it's so bizarre to me that people want us to go back and recreate that sound that we did when we were children ourselves. I had no comprehension or understanding of the real world. I was a kid. I'd left home at 17 and I moved to America with no one, no parental figure in my life, nothing. And we went wild, you know, which at the time is like, okay, fair enough, but it's not something to do now when we're older, we've got life experience, we've got kids, and I've actually realized what's important in life, and that is not it. And so, you know, it's like you said, the naysayers are always the loudest in the room. They're just so loud. And then I think back and I'm like, well, when I love an album, I don't go and make sure that I'm the loudest going, this album's the best, you have to listen to it. I just enjoy it. I really like it. But then when people don't like something, that's when they kick up a fuss. Like Yelp is a perfect example. Even restaurants, it's like you see people go in and out of restaurants all day, every day, having a nice time. And then there's one guy that got his food cold or something. And, oh, the whole world has to know how shit this establishment is. And it's like, dude, just shut up. Shut up. Go next door. Go get a McDonald's or something. Like, I don't know.
I mean, we live in a society where now everybody has an opinion, and because of social media, it allows them to project it as loud as they can possibly get to anyone that will possibly listen.
Yeah, and it can be damaging. And I think it's so insane to me. I bring him up because I feel like it's kind of important. But Chester Bennington, I didn't know him on a personal level. I obviously knew Linkin Park; they're a big inspiration to me. But that, from my understanding and from people that did know him, that wasn't a happy man a lot of the times. And Linkin Park did something spectacular, and they grew and they grew and they changed and they evolved. And for the last few albums of their career, people were shit talking. I hate Linkin Park. They're sellouts. They're this. They're that. And it's like, okay. And then Chester kills himself, and people go back and listen to those songs. They're like, oh man, I miss Chester's voice. He meant so much to me. It's like, hey, motherfucker, you're probably part of the reason he's not here anymore. Yeah. You weren't listening to his songs. You were just complaining about his past. And I can speak from experience. It's hard, and it's sometimes it gets me down. I'm just like, all we do is write music for people to enjoy and listen to. And you've got someone there telling you, oh, you know, you should go kill yourself. Your stuff sucks. I had someone the other day reach out to my wife with pictures of my children on a satanic altar saying, I'm going to kill your kids through the dark arts. And I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? And I go on this person's page and their pictures are me. They're a fan. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And I sat down and I really contemplated just not doing this anymore and being like, I'm out. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. But then you realize that one person, like you said, they're the loudest person. They got to me. They got under my skin. But for that one person, there's 10,000 other people that are super supportive, super cool, super respectful and appreciative. And so it's like, you can't let that one person ruin everything for us and everyone else. And so, but it does get tough, you know, like things like that aren't nice. And people just think they can say what they want.
That's too far. That's using someone's children. I mean, that's fucked up.
It's despicable. It's so bad. And there's nothing that anyone can do about it. It's like, oh, well, freedom of speech. And until they do something, like someone's been threatening Danny's life for like the last year, saying, next time you come to New York, I'm going to shoot you. And we've gone to the FBI and everything. They're like, well, you know, he's on our radar now. So if it happens, we'll get him. It's like, well, if it happens, it's too fucking late.
Yeah. If it happens, then Danny is either horribly injured or dead. And then you're going to do something about it?
And what about the people at the show? Like this guy, like, this is how the spray and praise happen. And it's just, I don't know. I think more needs to be done. But it's like you said, social media has given everyone a platform now. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily think it's a great thing for some things, and then it's terrible for others. So there's like a weird balance that needs to be found.
Right. I completely understand that. You know, I was hoping that through all of this and the pandemic, and I've seen a lot of positivity, but I've also seen so much negativity too. And I just thought, you know, you're stuck inside for 2 months, maybe reevaluate your inner person, because it's not pretty to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I was hoping the same thing. My mom was like, oh, people are going to come together. And a lot of people have, you know, and you see spectacular things in a time like this, but you also see the worst of people. Like the person that reached out to my wife, it's like, why have you done this? Like, what do you get out of this? I don't understand, but I guess it's just part of it. Not everyone's a nice person. You know?
No. Well, on to something much more positive. Like you were mentioning, AntiSocialist from the new album, it instantly charted. And this is the 9th, I believe it is, consecutive track for you guys to reach the top 20 radio hits. So
it is, yeah. That's
amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks. It's unreal. And people don't realize like how much work that is either. It's like, it's such a big deal. And it's almost easier to have like a random number one, like mm-hmm. right off the bat. Like I know a lot of bands have gone, whoa, we've got a number one and it's our first time at radio. And it's like, well, that's really cool, but it doesn't mean longevity. Like we've worked slow and steady to gain the respect. It's insane how much respect you need to gain in this world for people to believe in your band. And the fact that we've had 9 consecutive top 20s, and I think AntiSocialist is our 3rd consecutive top 10. That's pretty insane to me. And we're super excited. And like I said, this is the first time we've had a top 10 hit before the album's even come out. So I'm excited.
And, you know, you're a decade in to your music career with Asking Alexandria. So What is it that you think is different now than 10 years ago that's making this possible? And you guys are gaining more fans every day. You're gaining popularity. You're getting more radio play. Your tours are getting bigger. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a few reasons. I think one, we're not afraid to take those next steps. I mean, I listen to a lot of bands that have kind of kept the same sound, because it is scary branching out, and you do get backlash. But we've taken that in our stride, and we've not been afraid to evolve and change and grow over the years. So I think that's part of it. And two, I think a lot of it is an attitude too. Like I said before, what we want is for people to find some kind of joy in what we do and feel like a family. And I think people like that and they respect that. Before, when we were doing stuff 10 years ago, it was we were angry teenagers, and it was solely, the music catered to angry teenagers. So there was a mutual respect between our immediate demographic and our age. And as we've grown, I think people have grown with us, and more people are now discovering us. I see a lot of people saying, I've known of your band forever, but I never liked your stuff. It was just too much for me, which is fair enough. Music is open to interpretation. But now I really like what you're doing. I really like your message. So our fan base has been able to grow and expand with the band over the years, and I think we've put ourselves in some, I guess, daring situations when it comes to touring. Like, we've toured with hardcore bands. We've toured with really heavy bands like Slipknot and Slayer. And then we've gone and toured with Shinedown and Avenged Sevenfold. So we've really like tested the waters and not been afraid. Like, when we went out with Slayer, people were like, you're fucked. I can't believe you guys are going out with Slayer. You're going to get bags of shit thrown at you. And we were like, maybe, but if there's 5,000 Slayer fans in front of us and we can win over 900 of them, then we're growing, and we did. And I think we garnered a lot of respect for doing stuff like that. And you would even see the crowds, like, they would start off like just flipping us off. And we would be like, you're not going to get to us. And we'd acknowledge them and be like, it's okay, man. Like, you're going to get through this. Slayer and next, you're going to be good. And by the end of it, they'd be like, and they'd be having a good time. And they'd be like, yeah, okay, dude. And I'd be like, sick. But that's a scary thing to do. And I think a lot of bands don't do that because it is scary. And I think our manager is Avenged Sevenfold's tour manager. And he said they did the exact same thing too. Like, they went out with Iron Maiden. And Iron Maiden are huge. So these guys eventually would walk out on stage in these massive arenas and some places stadiums and just have Iron Maiden fans just like, fuck you. But they played through it. And, he's always told me there's a lot to be said for a band that will do that. And we've done that. And we did that since day one. Even when we would stand up and scream days, we went on tour with like hardcore bands. We went on tour with like Evergreen Terrace and For the Fallen Dreams, which was scary. And we had like straight edge crews at the show trying to beat us up because of the way we looked. But we did it. And the same thing, we just tried to earn their respect over the years. And we've never been afraid to step outside of our comfort zone.
Yeah. Speaking of your comfort zone, Like a House on Fire, you actually worked with Matt Good, who anyone who knows Matt Good, they know him to be from Drugs with Craig Owens, and they know from First to Last, and he's obviously a massive producer. But what is it that he offers that other producers offer, and how has he helped you guys to break out of that, the chains of being in the scene when he's very active still with a lot of those musicians?
The cool thing about Matt is, so I grew up, and From First to Last are one of my favorite bands. I used to drive to high school, and I got my license. The first CD I put in my car was Dear Diary. And I just blasted From First to Last when I was a kid. So then when I came to the States and we started touring, we did an Alesana tour. This is like back in like 2009, I think. And From First to Last were on that tour. So I was like, oh my God, I'm on tour From First to Last. And I hit it off with Matt. Matt's a few years older than me. And so he kind of took us under his wing then and was like showing us the ropes of touring. So we got like a rapport there. And then fast forward a few years, and Asking Alexandria had grown significantly. We took From First to Last out on our very first ever headliner. So we had a relationship with Matt where we were friends, and he'd watched our career grow. And so when we decided to work with him in the studio, it was just easy because he'd watched us and known us since we were kids and watched us grow. So it was just a very comfortable environment. he knew where we'd come from and could see where we were heading. And, you know, he had a similar success when he was young and From First to Last. They blew up and they went out with like Kiss. And Sonny obviously blew his voice out and ended up becoming Skrillex. So his journey was kind of cut short, but he'd been through it. Like, so he was just very helpful from the get-go since like 2009 when we were kids in sort of helping us navigate through these dark, murky waters that is the music industry. And so when we went to work with him on the record, it was just easy. It was like, oh, it just felt really good immediately. Whereas sometimes it could be quite daunting. You go in the studio, you've never worked with this producer before, you don't know what they're like as a person. And if you don't get on with them as a person, the whole process can be ruined. You know, it can be, so it's quite daunting. So to find someone that you work that well with, that quickly, that easily, I think it's quite a special thing. And it's why I think a lot of bands, they'll find their producer and stick with that person, because it's hard to find that relationship and it's important to have it.
I've heard all of you guys' albums. This album, it's massive. You know, I am also guilty of being, you know, sometimes like, well, I really liked this. Am I gonna like this? And hearing this album, it's very obvious that Matt was able to push you guys beyond any confines of what it means to be in the scene, what it means to be rock and roll. It's very obvious on the album. But were there ever any moments that, you know, between the self-titled and between the new album that you guys thought, maybe we're just not going to do this again? Maybe these loud voices have already gotten too loud and we're just done.
No.
Good.
Never. Oh, that only ever happened literally, I would say, like a week ago. It's the first time that's ever happened. But no, we've always been so sure of ourselves, and we've watched. I feel like Asking Alexandria has done such a crazy thing for our scene, and I don't think people might agree with me or they might not. I don't know, but I know the work we've put in, especially at like radio. Like Asking Alexandria, when we were doing the radio festivals back in like 2010, that wasn't a place for scene bands. Warped Tour bands didn't get that platform, and we went and we got that platform. And then you start seeing more and more of our scene and our friends coming and doing the same thing. And then the same thing with radio. Radio was like pretty much reserved for like Trapped and Avenged Sevenfold and the Shinedowns and Pop Roach of the world. There was no scene bands on the radio. And in 2011 we hit radio with Someone Somewhere, and I think it peaked at like number 48, so it didn't crack even the top 40, but it was an introduction. And I remember since then we've been having to kick doors down because the radio people are like, no, we don't want this Warped Tour band on radio, they don't belong here. And so we've had to fight and claw our way up and kick doors down. And now we get to see bands like A Day to Remember and I Prevail and Falling in Reverse having this radio success, which is awesome. And it's like, this is great, this is so cool. And I feel like, you know, I was talking to a lot of the heads at radio and stuff, and they're like, you know, this is happening because Asking shook it up and kicked those doors down. And that's coming from the heads of radio. So I'm like, that makes me feel really, really good and accomplished. But it's cool to know that our world too, and the bands that I grew up playing with can come and move forward now. Because I think for a very long time, people put a cap on what people call them Warped Tour bands, you know? And it's like, I think that's just so unfair. And it's hard to get rid of that stigma. Like if you look at Miss May I, for instance, a lot of people are like Warped Tour band, but Miss May I are so much more than that. They started in the scene just like we did, or We Car, or A Day to Remember, and they actually transcended into a really formidable metal band. Mm-hmm. But people still go, oh yeah, that's that Warped Tour band. And it's such a hard stigma to shake. And we've been shaken for a long, long, long time. I think finally we've shaken the stigma. And I think people confuse that with us turning our back on our past, when really we're trying to invite our past to come into this bigger world. And I think Bring Me have done a great job at doing that too. They were a quote unquote scene Warped Tour band, and they've transcended and they've opened the doors for this music to become more mainstream. And Ozzy Osbourne and Motorhead did it back in the day, and Metallica did it when they did their Black record. There have to be bands that do it for the rest of the scene to grow. And I think some people don't understand that, and they think of it as abandoning their roots, when really it's not. I think you're allowing the roots to continue to grow and spread, you know.
Right.
And bands like Of Mice and Men and We Came as Romans, they're still around killing it, but I think they've even gone on to explore bigger sounds that aren't so confined now. And I think it's just a cool thing to watch and be part of.
You know, as cheesy as it sounds, you kind of have to think of it like a tree. You plant your roots, you allow them to spread, and whether that be like the Warped Tour scene, you allow it to spread through Warped Tour, you grow from a small baby stage to the main stage, but when you start to grow forward, you have to grow. You can't just chop yourself and be left with these broken limbs. And I think Asking Alexandria have done, and I Prevail and Bring Me the Horizon, these artists are finally starting to get recognition that they deserve for this really great rock and roll music. I mean, it's becoming more obvious as we see artists are getting nominated for Grammys that you never thought you would see right there on the red carpet. And, you know, I think the next big step for those types of artists is right now they're not airing any of the rock and roll awards. And that needs to change. I
think it will change, you know, and I'm excited for that to happen. And the next thing that needs to happen too is that bands from our generation and our scene, we need to start headlining arenas too, because that shows the growth. And you know, as soon as Asking Alexandria and I Prevail and all these bands can start headlining themselves in arenas, that's going to be a big day. And I think A Day to Remember are like on the cusp of that. They've done a few headline arena tours, but they're not like a permanent arena headliner band yet, but they're so close. And I think Bring Me are pretty close to being that over in the UK and Europe. And I think that's important because arenas are kind of reserved for your Shinedowns, your Five Fingers. And we've had the discussion with a lot of the festival owners and the people that put the festivals on it. They're like, who are our next headliners going to be? Like, once these bands retire and stuff, it's like, well, that's kind of up to you guys. You need to help these younger bands, your Askings, you need to get them up the ladder to help grow, because otherwise you're going to be left with no headliners. And then what happens? You know, so I think that's what's happening. I think there's almost like, people refer to it as the changing of the guard. I think that's like on the horizon now, which is really, really cool. And it's exciting, and it just means that rock is getting bigger, and people are like, rock's getting smaller and smaller. And it's like, I don't know that I agree with that. I think CD sales and charting, people are misconstruing that. Like, people always go, oh, your self-titled album like wasn't as successful as the album you did with Dennis the Black. And it's like, it's way more successful, it's way bigger, but it didn't chart as high and it didn't sell as many physical products because that's getting less. And people are misconstruing that for rock getting smaller. But streams are up, concert attendance is up. Like, rock is still very much here. And I think it's getting bigger. And I think as these younger bands climb the ladders, it's only going to get bigger again, especially when, like I say, I see older people coming to our show with their kids. Well, a high percentage of those kids are probably going to remain rock and roll fans.
Yep. You got to teach them young.
Exactly. It's awesome.
So, you know, speaking of kids, you obviously have your two children. Danny is married. He also has his solo project. And then you've been working alongside Andy Black for American Satan and then Paradise City. Mm-hmm. How is it that you're putting enough love and attention into all of your projects without spreading yourself thin? Because you're doing an incredible job, but I don't even know how you do it.
I dedicate time to each of them. Like, I don't try and do two things at once, other than obviously my kids. They're always, you know, but like when it comes to working, I try not to be in the studio writing a record and then flying out to act and then fly back to the studio. It's like, okay, if I'm focusing on this record, that's what I'm focusing on. And then when that's done, there's like a big gap of time between a record being finished, written and recorded. It then has to go to mixing and mastering and getting it on the books and release dates. So there's a huge amount of time, over a year, where you're kind of just sitting there. And so it's like, okay, well, now I'm going to concentrate on this. So I filmed the TV show with Andy all in one go. And that was right before I knew we were gearing up to tour. So it's like, okay, well, I've got these months where I'm not touring and my record's done. And so I try and give 100% of my creative effort to one thing at a time. Otherwise, I do feel like you do spread yourself thin, and it's like, okay, well, this has suffered and this has suffered. You know, I feel like it's important to differentiate. And when it comes to my family, I think the greatest thing in the world is FaceTime. Like even my parents, like I probably talk to my mom about 3 to 5 times a day on FaceTime, and she's there. Even like my kids will call my mom, they won't even talk to her. They'll just set her up on FaceTime, like, okay, and they'll get on with their day. Yeah. But my mom's there in the background, and she's getting on with her day, but they'll run over and be like, oh, grandma, oh, yep, still there, okay. And I try and do the same thing when I'm on tour. Like my kids will just be on FaceTime all day, every day, even if I'm not talking to them. Like a lot of people go on tour and they'll sit and they'll talk and they're like, okay, bye. And then they'll do the same thing tomorrow. My kids are always there. FaceTime is always on, and it's always on for me. So if they need me to, even if I'm working, like I'll hear it and they're like, Dad, and I'm like, oh, and I'll run over. So I think you just have to be dedicated. There's a lot of time where I think people sit around all day doing nothing.
Now more than ever.
Yeah, but it's like, well, fill that time with something. Don't sit down. Every time, like me and my wife try not to turn the TV on in our house until we go to bed. And then it's like, okay, we're in bed, let's put a show on. Because otherwise, if the TV's on during the day, you get sucked into it. You just sit there, and then before you know it, you've been sat in front of the TV for 6 hours. When I could have been talking to my mom, or I could have been teaching my daughter how to write her name, or I could have been auditioning for another movie. There's so much stuff that you could be doing, and people just waste their time. I don't think they know how to delegate their time very well.
You know, speaking of obviously auditioning and acting, do you plan to go beyond just the American Satan franchise and land additional roles that push you to be a better actor and maybe not just play in a rock and roll position?
100%. Acting had never been anything I was interested in. I at school when we did drama, I was too afraid to do it, so I just would skip class. I never did it. And then I did the movie, and I had a really... One of my kids is speaking. Hi, sweetheart. Hey. You want to come sit here? You got to be quiet though, okay? Okay. And so I had a really good time, and I guess I did a good enough job in the movie to get... I got picked up by an agent. And since then, I've been doing a lot of auditions, and I've landed quite a few roles. But again, they've always come like, okay, well, we're filming from here to here, and I've had touring, so I'm like, well, I can't divide my time, so I've had to turn them down. Are you crazy? Do you want to come say hi? No.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Thank you.
I see why you always want her on FaceTime. I wouldn't let that face go either. Hi.
Can you say hi? No.
What?
She's hiding. She's shy. But yeah, so I've had to turn down a lot of movies and stuff to tour, because again, if I'm on tour, I'm concentrating on tour because I want to give my best. But you know, it is something that I want to pursue, and I probably do about 6 to 10 auditions a week. I've been doing a lot of voiceover auditions for like Nickelodeon and stuff lately too. Yeah, so it's something that unknowingly I've ended up really enjoying.
Well, I'm sure that, you know, growing your stage presence with Asking Alexandria has started to help you grow into an acting career where you're feeling more comfortable.
It's actually the opposite.
Really?
Yeah. I've got so much more confident on stage as a performer from acting than I ever, like I was comfortable on stage, but I never would like address the crowd really. There's like a secret trick that lots of performers do where you look at the back of the room and then it looks like you're looking at everyone. And so you kind of sing to the back of the room, you point at the back of the room, and people, when they're down below, they're none the wiser. You know, it looks like you're engaging in interaction with the crowd, because it is quite daunting. Like, it's a scary thing. Cameron still will sometimes throw up before we go on stage. It's you get nervous. But since acting, I was so nervous when I started acting. I've learned so much about myself and becoming confident on camera that when I'm on stage now, I don't look at the back of the room anymore. I'm like looking at people's eyes. I'm interacting, engaging with specific people in the crowd, and I love it. And I'm just so much more confident on stage. So who knew?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, I see you have your hands full. I will let you get back to your family today.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you talking to me. Hopefully, I know that the Paradise City teaser is coming out today. Hopefully, I'll get to get on the phone with you and Andy very soon to talk about that. But
yeah, I'd love that.
In the meantime, I'm so excited for everyone to hear the album. If you want to just give a shout out to the fans and let them know about the album, that would be great.
Yeah, I just obviously thank you so much to everyone that's listened. I think, what is it, May 15th the record comes out? I don't even know anymore, but I'm excited. I appreciate everyone that's been along for the ride with us. It's been a crazy ride. And I do know that the one voice doesn't dictate the millions of fans that we have gained over the last few years around the world. So obviously thank you to everyone. And I hope that they take from the album what we intend for them to take from it. It's a very meaningful album. So I hope people enjoy it.
I think everyone's really going to love it. Thank you so much again. And I'll talk to you very soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.